Itami, a 33-year-old otaku, always puts his hobby first, never taking his job seriously. On his way to an anime and manga convention, a giant gate appears in Ginza, Tokyo, when he walks into a pole and has visions of a fantasy world. A dragon flies out of the gate, followed by a legion of soldiers wearing what looks to be Roman armor, and they begin terrorizing the city. One of the soldiers lunges at a police officer. Itami jumps into action, tackling him to the ground and killing him with his own dagger. Despite being dressed in shorts and a t-shirt, he tries to get the police to evacuate the citizens. After a call to their higher-ups, they start following his orders. It turns out Itami is a JSDF, Japan's Special Defense Force reservist, and was promoted to first lieutenant for his heroic efforts in Ginza. He's not happy about his new position. After all, he missed the convention and now has way more responsibility than he ever wanted. He only took the job to pay for his hobby. The otaku life is the only life for him. The Prime Minister of Japan announces that they will be sending a JSDF unit through the gate with the full support of the US President. After 3 months of preparation and scouting, the new Prime Minister of Japan declares that the JSDF is now ready to deploy a special task force. Itami stands among the ranks, ready to find out what lies beyond the mysterious gate, which they dub the Special Region. In the imperial capital, the Senate petitions Emperor Molto on how to respond to the assault. Their army that met the JSDF at Almas Hill, where the gate is located, was completely obliterated. The emperor sends messengers to rally neighboring states, but when they answer the call to arms, Duran, a commander, becomes suspicious when the imperial forces are nowhere to be seen. They plan their attack for the following morning, but the imperial army is still absent. Duran leads his troops to the battlefield, only to find the aftermath of a bloodbath. Their first offensive results in approximately 10,000 deaths. Their second, 40,000. They've never seen modern weaponry and are completely powerless against the JSDF. Duran plans to attack at night, but to no avail. The enemy signals with flares and guns down their forces. Shields are no match for bullets. The total death toll surpasses 100,000, and the Emperor's plans to neutralize the surrounding territories' armies is a success. They no longer have the power to overtake the imperial capital. He orders the destruction of nearby towns and villages to cut off the food supply and create a dependency on the empire. His daughter demands to know what he's going to do about the invaders, so he tells her to take her Order of the Rose, merely a princess playing knight in his eyes, to scout and assess the situation. The US president decides to sit back and wait until Japan's operation fails. Itami is put in charge of the 3rd Recon Squad to survey the land and make first contact with the locals. Hopefully, peaceful relations are on the table. The team sees smoke in the distance. The source? An enormous flame dragon. There's one problem. Their intelligence tells them there should be a town in the middle of the blaze. Looking for survivors seems fruitless, since everything has been reduced to ash. Just when they decide to report back, Itami discovers someone unconscious at the bottom of a well. Rappelling to the bottom, he retrieves the only survivor, an elf. They decide to take her with them back to Koda, the village they passed through earlier. When the townsfolk learn of the dragon attack, they immediately begin packing their belongings and abandon the village, including a young mage, Lele, and her teacher. When she sees the JSDF, she goes to investigate the strange people. She's saved by the JSDF just before a startled horse was about to trample her. A group of bandits plan to ambush the townspeople as they escape on the road, when a girl wielding a giant halberd appears. She mows them down, smiling the whole time, and introduces herself as Rory Mercury, an apostle of the dark god Emroy. The 3rd Recon team helps escort the refugees. Itami has to make some concessions to remain true to their peaceful mission, burning a cart with a broken axle blocking the way. Before they can continue their journey, they spot some crows on the horizon. It's Rory Mercury, the goth Lolita that Itami saw in his vision. The children refer to her as an oracle and rush to meet her. Taking a special interest in Itami, she joins them in their carriage, insisting on sitting on his lap. Before they can continue on their way, the flame dragon they saw raise the village appears, causing the elf to suddenly wake up. Their .50 caliber rounds are useless. The elf notices and motions to her eyes. Itami, confused at first, realizes she wants them to aim at its eyes. They ready an RPG and fire, but it's off its mark, until Rory springs into action. throwing her halberd at the ground, creating enough of an impact to move the dragon into the RPG's path. It explodes, dismembering the dragon of its left arm. It retreats. The refugees thank the JSDF, but can't accept any more of their help and part ways, leaving a few stragglers with them, including the elf, Loli, Rory, and a few of the children. When asked what he'll do, Itami decides to bring them back to Alness Hill as refugees, wanting to do the humane thing. As the team returns to the base, the elf, Tuka, awakens from a nightmare of her father sacrificing himself to save her. Pina and members of her Order of the Rose, Hamilton, Norma, and Gray, learn about the JSDF fending off the flame dragon from a local bartender. Itami is chewed out for bringing the refugees back to base without any communication, but he's quickly forgiven due to the amount of intel they can gather from the inhabitants, and he's tasked with their care. Loli picks up Japanese quicker than the others, understanding the importance of learning how to communicate. In China, the president believes that the special region would benefit more if the gate appeared in his country. Though they want to maintain diplomacy, he's ready to send in half of his forces if the opportunity arises. While in Japan, the prime minister is asked about the civilian casualties in the special region. Trying to garner public approval, he explains that it was a monster and the JSDF were not at fault. Loli, Rory, and Tuka marvel at the indoor baths and discuss the world beyond the gate. There are more countries than they thought, and Japan is merely one out of many. Pina speaks with Duran, who survived the battle, and learns that the massacre was due to the Emperor's orders, sending the other armies to die while the Empire's forces held back. She decides to visit Alness Hill with her knights, stopping in Italica, a city on the way. Tuka still doesn't believe her father perished with the others, and asks for extra supplies and men's clothes. She's worried that they may have to find an alternate means of repaying the JSDF for their hospitality, though her worry quickly fades when Loli informs them of the numerous winged dragon corpses on the battlefield. Their scales are worth a pretty penny, and the JSDF has no use for them. Itami and his team travel to Italica to continue their mission and sell the scales. Though nervous at first, they reassure Tuka that she can trust the JSDF. They did fend off a dragon after all. The team spots a plume of smoke in the distance, billowing from the city of Italica. The city is under siege by survivors from the Allied army, fending off their attackers under the command of Princess Pina. After the battle, she dreams of her childhood and starting her own order of knights, despite the royals all treating it as a joke. But now, she finally has the chance to prove the Order of the Rose isn't useless after all. Suddenly, she's woken by a bucket of water to the face. The JSDF's 3rd Recon team has arrived at the gates. The princess gives them a tour of the mansion, while explaining that Italica's nobles died and left their only child in charge, so she took the reins as commander to defend the city. Itami is surprised he understands her, becoming more familiar with their language. They agree to help defend the city, and Pina tells the 3rd Recon to guard the severely damaged southern gates, mostly as bait, since there's only 12 of them. Rory wonders why Itami is allying himself with the Empire. He explains that he wants to protect the people of Italica and show the princess that they aren't enemies and that there are alternatives to war. The prospect of the upcoming battle excites Rory. She can finally go crazy on the enemy. But instead of attacking the south, the enemy breaks through the eastern gate, which Pina and her knights are struggling to defend. She hesitates to act, seeing the horrors of war for the first time. Itami waits impatiently for her to give the order and call for backup. What is she going to do? And why hasn't she done it yet? Itami calls for backup, but ground forces are too slow, so they send the airborne unit instead to aid the battle raging in Italica. The attackers kill the eastern commander, Norma, which bolsters the enemy troops as they continue to advance through the eastern gate. Princess Pina is still unsure of what to do. She keeps freezing up, unable to counter the attack. Rory can barely hold back and becomes euphoric. Loli explains that as an apostle of Emroy, the souls of fallen soldiers flow through her as a sort of aphrodisiac. She can't take it any longer and races towards the battle at the East Gate, with Itami and the 3rd Recon on her heels. The 4th Combat Unit's helicopters make their way to Italica to the tune of Wagner's Ride of the Valkyries, ready to light them up as the sun comes up. Rory arrives and instantly cuts down the largest bandit, shocking the enemy. As the 4th unit appears and starts picking off the bandits who attempt to flee, Those who stay are quickly dealt with by Rory and Kurabayashi. The 4th unit tells them to clear the area before using Gatling guns to mow down the remaining enemy forces. Pina fears that the JSDF will use their power to take advantage of their weakness, but during negotiations, they were taken off guard by their lack of demands. On their way back, the 3rd Recon Unit is met by more of Pina's order, but they're not quite as friendly. Itami tells the rest of his unit to make a run for it while he's being taken prisoner. The 3rd Recon Unit stakes out the town, waiting to rescue Itami. Pina chews out her knights, worried about the consequences of breaking the new treaty not even a day after it was signed. Gray suggests that they apologize since they're no match for the JSDF. The team makes its way back into the city. Tuka uses her magic to knock out the guards. In the mansion, Itami wakes up surrounded by maids. They tell him the knights have been reprimanded, asking him to spare the countess, to his confusion. The 3rd Recon shows up at the back door, and the head maid tells them to treat them with hospitality. Pina commands her knights to make up for their mistake, even if it means offering their bodies. So Boses shows up at the door, wearing a less-than-knightly nightgown. Upon entering, she sees everyone getting along and taking pictures. Angry and feeling degraded, she slaps Itami. He's called back to Alness Hill to meet with the Japanese Senate, and Pina requests to travel with him to see what's on the other side of the gate, taking Boses with her. Itami invites Tuka to speak with the Japanese government, along with Loli acting as a translator. Rory overhears and demands to join them. Boses asks Pina if they are willing to start a war over the broken treaty, but the princess quells any anxieties, reasoning that they wouldn't take them along if that were the case. They still don't understand why the Japanese seem so reasonable, treating their own people and even the refugees with such hospitality. They head out the next day, with Pina and Boses in disguise, just in case. Thank you for sticking until the end. Subscribe for more videos like this.